mother's side is Peranakan. Given that my dad's side is Cham. Although a lot of people, I don't know, just assume that somehow I'm maybe it's because of my name. But because during that era, there's always a mom that's always talking to the kids. That's right. I guess that's hence the term mother tongue. So grew up, speaking a lot of Baba with them, Champo, Hokkien, Bahasa. Yeah, and conversationally, yes, bypass people, pakala, and sudah makan, that kind of thing. But that's the extent of it. I know enough to get in trouble, but other than that, with the usual Hokkien Baba going up, always getting scolded chilaka and that kind of thing. And so those were the things. But I must say that even then, as the things growing up during that time, I must say I had our share of fun. Originally, I was down at the Balestier right now, where it's called Hygiene Lane, where Zhongshan Mall is sitting right now. It was this huge villa brand that used to be a racehorse owner. He started getting into all shenanigans as well. But then, after that, I remember we moved out. That was when I was still, I think close to kindergarten at that time. And then thereafter relocated to Toa Payoh. Grew up there as Yes. So at that time, Toa was one of the first. Yeah, one of the very new housing estates, and I remember they gained a notorious reputation of being called Chicago of Singapore, right? But those were early days. Then since then, all the housing estates sprung up. So Toa Payoh is now one of the more mature estates. Yeah. So what social class would you say your family background is? Oh, I would say you take it the bottom of the mom during the Japanese occupation, she left school and never went back to work. So pretty much, they had to just earn a chief as well. And growing up at that time, what jobs did they do? Your parents? No, my basically my mom was a housewife. My dad was basically, he was one. I couldn't try to figure out at that time, and then never really got the music. He was working at some point of his photographs. I think he was working with the airlines or something. Then later on, passed away. Never really got to know. Much closer to your mother than your father. It was just a thing that our parents were. So what was your schooling experience like? Very unlike what I you eventually went to ACS, right? I did. What was that? My dad was an old boy over there, so and was at the Buffalo. I was from Buffalo too. Really? My year was year 57. Before you were born. So wait a second. So okay lah. Right. Now when I went back, because my son finished already, but when I went back a couple of times, it was completely unrecognized. They rebuilt the whole thing. So the tuck shop, quadrangle, all the school field, everything's gone. School field's gone. And now in its place right now, I think there's a big multi-story car park. So on top of that, there's a swimming pool, right? Yeah. And apparently the clock tower, they demolished it and moved it like a few meters, and then rebuilt it. You know better. Yeah. How? But no, I mean, to answer your question, growing up with ACS was strict. And I remember, I didn't do it personally. Like, we went catching spiders, stuff like that. You know, hantam bola, you know, jate. All right. And you had space for that.
Were you in sports or?
No, I wasn't particularly a very
Were you
athletic. No, I was, you know, I don't know why. Growing up, I was one of the shorter ones in class. And so every time you lined up, the teacher would ask you, line up, sit in front. The shorter ones sit in front, taller ones at the back.
Mr. Ratnam, did you say?
Oh, yes. My goodness.
Yes, do you know that he's the grandfather of Tharman?
Oh, really?
Yes.
The science teacher?
Yes.
Then now when you mentioned it, yeah, it does strike that resemblance, right?
Yes.
He used to teach us science, physics, and was it chemistry? I've forgotten already. But in any case, you know, I must say that I enjoyed the phase. I'm afraid to say that I can't say the same for my son, because since then things have been very different.
Things have changed a lot.
Yeah. And as I said, the space afforded you that time as well.
When you talk about space, what do you mean?
You know, if you look at where the present
Physical space.
Physical space. Right? A dorm has come up for international students, and everything is chock-a-block, right? There isn't room for you to go and play and wander around. I don't know if you remember, but the school field walking down Essamon Lake, it was one of the most rustic, you know, and then there was an outhouse over there that's almost derelict, but, you know, so it was just haunted, that kind of thing. But that's what I mean. You could go out and explore.
So who are some of the classmates that are in the public view nowadays?
Alvin Yeo, the late Alvin Yeo, passed away, the PAP MP. Yeah, I think he passed away. He was my classmate. And if I'm not mistaken, somewhere down the road there, Ang Peng Siong came up, swimmer. But he left us in secondary school or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. You know, so those people. My year, not very many people have taken that public office role.
Yeah. So, the joke that we all have is that ACS boys went into business, and RI boys went into the government.
You know, that seems to be the conventional say. Although of course I know a lot of schoolmates.
I don't know about your time, but my time, the ACS student character was kind of irreverent, playful, right? I don't know about your time.
There was one. I remember one incident. I think Raffles Institution, but one of their buildings caught fire. During school assembly, somebody said everybody put it in, take responsibility. So that was the kind of, and I remember during those days, oh my goodness, rugby. Whenever we were up in St. Andrews, RI, or the whole school just gearing up for it, and then after that the withdrawals and that. But you know, we all took it in the spirit of
I mean, ACS versus RI rugby. That's really an occasion for
and you always get your spikes and that kind of thing. It's just a lot of rivalry, but at the same time, I think it was very.
No, this is very important because I think your school background or childhood background, they offer some indications as to your tenacity, your what should I say, your courage to go against conventions. I mean, so basically, where does your fighting spirit come from?
I don't know. I mean, I'm
because the title of your book, Never on Bended Knees. That's very clear that you have this fighting spirit in you.
I look back at my own family tree. Very few of them, although okay lah. You go back, talk about my great grandfather. He was one of those people who organized that for Sun Yat-Sen, and he was one that started one of the regional newspapers here in Singapore. But apart from that, I cannot see. I haven't found anybody who's really actively engaged in politics, much less coming out and trying to swim upstream.
No, not just politics. Were you a fighter in school?
Got into a couple of fisticuffs. Got in a couple of fisticuffs. But
you know, need a kind of gang.
No, I mean, no,
gang
no,
leader.
no, I mean,
Oh no, my time there's
Just
plenty
to-
of gangs.
just to paraphrase, we are not gangsters, that.
Yeah.
But then, okay lah, we weren't exactly angels lah.
Yeah.
But at this time, it was all in good fun, And after that, I remember getting into a couple of sessions with guys, and after we put our hands around each other and they're okay lah, let's go for a little touch up and eat together, that kind of thing. So nothing was ever taken for. There was always that rivalry that we would, And also, okay, because I was in NPCC, that National Police Cadet Corps, and we would organize camps during school breaks, and then St. John would organize their camps. The National Cadet Corps would. And at night, we would organize, wait until everybody's asleep, and then we organize raiding parties. You know how, it's 15-year-olds, what they're up to. We'll go over there, we'll put chili into their boots, smear, Colgate onto their faces, and that kind of thing. But everything I just remember was good fun. Yeah. And come back to class again. So recently, that year just got together, here for our reunion. And some of them for 40 years. We still see each other, and then right now just reminisce with old times. And yeah, so it's that kind of camaraderie.
Yeah. So basically, I want to kind of lead you into discussing your political outlook. Okay. But before we go there, your education, your university education. How was it that you went to America? Why?
Oh my gosh! Because to be very honest with you, I walked through my ACJC days and do Chinese school, not junior college, not public here. Because I didn't know what I was doing half the time. I hated class because everything was just memorization, right? Whether it was physics, biology, chemistry, and I don't know what possessed me to take the combination of those courses over there. I absolutely hated it, detested it. And then even our general paper, it was all about structured writing, follow formula. I don't know, when I look back right now, it never really afforded me that kind of space, that intellectual freedom to explore and to discover self. So I absolutely hated the 2 years.
So what were you doing in your spare time that?
Going to the library, like what everybody's sitting in the student carrels, just picking up a book. But the book was there. The mind was somewhere else. And I never quite figured out.
So your mind was where?
Yeah, again, thinking back, was everywhere except in the classroom. And
you were not an outdoor person, were you? A lot. Were you into reading books?
At that time, no. At that time, no. I just.
So what occupied your mind?
I guess it was just, I don't know, just wandering around.
Because a lot of kids at that time were
sure,
movies and comics and whatever. Yeah.
And during that time, disco was the in thing lah.
Disco.
Disco. And I remember Glenn Gui.
Glenn, yeah.
Oh my gosh, Glenn was the party guy. always organizing parties and so on and so forth. At that time, I didn't know him very well.
So girls and all that were
GSO and so what, Girl Scout Officer or something like that. He had a name for them. They were especially had to go to CHIJNGS to get to know the girls and bring them to our parties and those kinds of things. So it wasn't years of very productive, but contrasted.
But you were having fun. That's basically right.
I was also very lost. So compared to say the secondary school days, primary school days, I just when you think back, I was very lost when I was in junior college. Not quite sure what you wanted to do. It's just it's just next door here, and never quite really figured what I wanted to do and what life was all about. All those philosophical questions, but in the end, just coasted through, managed to get by, but performed dismally. And then the next thing I knew, we were in NS.
What were you in NS?
I was at decent camp for my BNP recruit, and then at the end of 3 months, I was transferred over to the police side. So I did 9 months of training as an officer cadet. Graduated with.
So your NPCs think,
don't know. Actually, I didn't think that there was this connection, but it turned out that they transferred me over.
But they knew it, I guess.
I don't know.
Records.
Maybe. But I must say that after that, following junior college, I did enjoy my passion for this stuff. You've got to roll with the punches. I know a lot of people that got this mindset that really oppose ideas and that kind of thing. But I must say that even during the 3 months of army training, I enjoyed it with my mates in my platoon and had a rollicking time. It was tough. But many stories to tell before during that. And because we were in Yishun camp over there, one side was what they called Hokkien Bangs, And for us, every little bit, the sergeant cursed on it or wanted to complain already. So it was a kind of the two different subcultures, if you will. So, but nevertheless, really, I just thought that, and that the other day I saw my army buddy, which also happened to be my SJC mate.
Do you still keep in touch with him?
Yes. No. They came a couple of times over here. But I wasn't here at that time. When we caught up again during the reunion I was telling you about.
Yeah.
And it goes way back to when we were in the 20s. And then had a lot of fun. And even during police training, it was something that was now open up. So we graduated as inspectors, probation inspectors, and thrown in the deep end to do a bit of criminal investigation, that kind of thing. But again, it was a tremendous, experience in it. I remember we were then assigned after training. We was assigned, and I was assigned to posted to Toa Payoh Division, which is no longer there already. B Division, and I remember having to assign every now and then, getting close to the sometimes once a month, sometimes once a fortnight, to go on to Serangoon Road area, Desco Road area, and there, right? And we were in a plain clothes, so two sergeants were assigned to me, but in actual fact, you took the keys from them. They're the Lao Jiaos already, right? They know the streets. And the two guys that I was assigned to were called Singapore Stars and Hutch. I don't know if you remember that. So you know that the general trend that we were going, those guys were gung-ho, and he just came the other day again and says, "Hey, can you remember me?" And it took me a little while, but in the end, I recognized him. Yeah. I just remember one incident when we were at Desco Road. I thought we got out of the car, right? And all of a sudden, he got his revolver. Oh, and then I said, what the hell's going on? He told me, "Okay, I'll pull your revolver." I said, "Oh, why?" Then he noticed a guy, one of his it was an altar. Then the guy pulled out a bread knife, and he was holding his arm this way, right on his lower arm, and he was walking towards another product. I think they were going to get a fight or something like this. And that was the first time that I pulled out of it, what I was going to, in those kind that you train for it, but nothing like meeting with the thing. Then that guy saw, and then he said, the guy just said, Mata, and then, and everybody just split through it. And then I just saw one guy running away. I just chased after him. And after quite a while, he turned into one house. Then I got to him. Then I was panicking. He was panicking. Then I said, "Why did you run?" And and he was just, I don't know. I saw the gun pulled out, so I was scared. And in the end, after checks and everything, he was innocent. So that was just one incident. There were quite a few incidents.
But that was quite a brave thing to do, right? You're running after somebody who might be
that
gangster, right?
Adrenaline pumping. The sergeant was out chasing one guy. I just saw one guy running, spin in that direction. Your instinct is just, let's go for it. That kind of thing.
So that instinct is very important. Which I would like to come back on, you see, right? Because I think it has to do with something to do with your character,
I don't know. It was just that I suppose, okay, but right up until then, it never really dawned on me. That you're talking about my early 20s, so it never dawned on me that what I really wanted to do at that time. So it was just...
Okay, we'll come later on to the effect of bravery, right, on your political life, right? But we'll come to that. But before that, let's talk about your American experience. Right. First of all, how did you happen to go to America?
Really, because at that time I was struggling. That was during NS at the time. I took my A-levels as a private candidate. At that time, you could still do it.
Yeah.
And I did just as miserably. So after training, I remember when I was at police academy. So sometimes, training would end about 5 o'clock, and then we'll go for dinner. After that, I'll take my books and go to the classroom and try to, mug for the exams, but never got very far either. And I just remember after that, when I finished our ROD already, I was still, grappling with what I was going to do, life and so on. And I remember thinking of I didn't qualify for any of the departments at NUS. And I did think of doing distance learning in law. But at the same time, I just felt that I had to get out of Singapore. I just couldn't. It was just so an intellectual, cultural desert as far as I was concerned. And, I'm talking about just finishing RD. But then I remember at that time I started getting interested in some of the issues, and I don't know again what possessed me, but the first book that I picked up, I remember it was a non-fiction book. It was 4 topics. It was the Arab-Israeli conflict. I just picked it up and I read it and just found it very engaging at that time.
This would be in the
early 80s. So after that, after a little while, I just felt that I had to get out. Otherwise, I did contemplate at one point of signing on with the police. But over there, some of the inspectors that advised me against it. He said, look, is that that's true. You've got, ideas and plans to want to go further, don't. Because after a little while, you kind of get into a rut. That's the end of it already. So, okay, I decided against it. Go on. And then I just thought that, look, I had to get out. So, I didn't do the law, distance law. And I screwed up enough courage to think that, hey, look, let's go to the US at that time. And my grades were so poor that none of the top schools would take me on as well. So, I found a little college there that would take me. Then there was another problem. It's hugely expensive going to the US. So I spent 1 more year after I ORD during tuition classes and so on. And then, of course, my sister, elder sister.
Oh, you made some money from tuition?
Tuition, yes. So, you go down to their homes and then, I did it full time for a good year. So managed to rustle up enough for funds. And as I said, with the help of my sister, then manage 1 year's expenses. So on a wing and a prayer, I left for the US, not knowing whether I was going to be able to go on the second year or so. But then, when I remember when I got there, I walked into, they assigned you a major professor. I decided I wanted to do psychology. I walked in the major professor's room, his office, and he says, "Oh, yes, hi, take a seat. So, tell me, what do you want to study? What courses do you want to take?" And I just looked at him, right? Because having come from the Singapore system, why are you asking me? You're supposed to tell me what I'm supposed to. I said, no, the US, you've got core subjects, but then after that, they're also electives, and you go according to what you feel like studying. And it was then that I realized that.
So it was a bit of a culture shock.
It was complete culture shock. And it just dawned on me that, how it is that to use that cliche, you begin to discover, you're captain of your own, you chart your own way, isn't it? Captain of your own destiny.
Is this where the seeds of democracy?
Yes. It is, yes. And then I just felt that, and as I did the courses, I knew that the professors there were not there just to teach you. They were there to help you to explore, what you were about. And just remember then, it was tough. It was very tough. There was a lot of reading and work going on. But I never found it a tedium. I just felt that I was beginning to grow intellectually, and I discovered myself.
Because I noticed in your book, you mentioned a lot of, you referred to quite a few major philosophers, like
and that was, of course, postgraduate when you read about Rene Descartes, Locke and Hume, so on. But when you do it at undergraduate, that was when I really felt that, everything I did.
So you were prior to that, you were reading Freud.
Yes. Jung, Freud, Skinner, and the one thing that then my first course that I took at the end of the semester, I scored straight A's, and I just felt that I never in a million years, given my experiences, is just thought I could come back. But then semester after semester after semester, every semester, I was in president's list. In order to get a president, because everything has to be straight A.
Singapore experience, right?
Yes, everything had to be straight A. So I graduated the entire 4 years, straight A's. Every semester I got in the president's list. And then it just spurred me on. And I just kept thinking and examining one situation. And I just found that the education system is just one big memorization examination. And I remember at the time I started getting interested in some national affairs. And I remember going to the library there. And at that time, Straits Times. Overseas, they only had the weekly issue.
For the overseas version.
Yes, overseas weekly issue. So I went to the land every week. I go there. I pull up the issue over there. Of course, everything about Paris. But then I remember.
Did you still have a nostalgia for Singapore?
I did. I must say I did. In that sense that it's when you ask what you hanker for, it's a sight and sounds. the smells, the taste and everything. Singlish, right? Those was what binds us with us in Singapore. Yes. And yes, that's exactly right. But at that time, I also remember taking a very critical view of the government.
Really?
Yes. And I remember whenever I went to the Straits Times, I looked at it and said, I had to tell myself, hang on, why is there only one newspaper? And when you're immersed in culture, you know that they prided themselves freedom of press. And then I began to question so on, and I took a very, very deep and abiding interest in the education system.
But okay, on that point, you obviously were very disappointed with your education experience in Singapore, right? Did you take that to the PAP? The kind of the kind of rigidity,
sure,
the kind of prescriptive process.
When I was going through it, of course, not because other all students, you kind of didn't even have time. But then after that, you have the luxury of back and being able to compare what you were going through in your varsity years and compare and looking back, say, what did I just come through? What did I learn? And at that time, I just remembered that I never quite got into what I could do at the university level. And, I then got involved with the International Students Organization there. I got myself, that was, I think, my first got myself elected as the president there. Although it wasn't very much, you're just organizing activities, tours for students, that kind of thing. Friday night movies, all those kinds of activities there. But nonetheless,
but you were beginning to develop your leadership.
I suppose, yeah. And then, you talk to your fellow students in there, and then you begin to find out what makes them tick and what they would like to see them as an organization doing. And you would be the liaison between them and the school and the university administration. So I guess if I wanted to trace it, that would be the seedlings of how I.
Okay. Now, the choice of studying psychology as your major, right? People say that, I know it for myself also. The interest in psychology basically is also to sort yourself out. Yeah. Isn't it? Was that your motivation?
I guess maybe. I don't know. I don't want to get Jungian in this whole conversation, but it may be that there may be just subconscious. But
you wanted to know how the mind works,
right? A large extent as well. Your sensory perception, for example. And how, for example, sometimes your mind, what you see, not with your eyes, but actually with your brain, that kind of thing. How images are then interpreted, and all those kinds of things. So I found the field fascinating, and it was so wide ranging. On the one hand, you've got the social side of this. Then on the other hand, you've got the medical side of psychology. So, and in between everything. And I suppose the psychology is basically the widest definition. It's the study of behavior, right? And if you want to narrow it down, the study of human behavior. And human behavior.
So your thesis was on rats, right?
Sorry?
Your PhD thesis was on rats.
Rats, yes. So, but then, you're talking about studying psychology, and psychology is about everything that's got to do with politics as well, about human behavior, why we behave in a certain way, how you predict the behavior, how you want to try to attempt to control that behavior. So all these things came in.
Which may be reflected in animal behavior as well, right?
Yes. So, I went through those 4 years, just, really, I hate to use the word enjoy, because it's not really quite rich, but I found it very gratifying in that sense.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a bit of a touchy question. You became a fellow of the National Endowment for Democracy. Yeah. Did you know that it was in fact a CIA cutout? So the question I want to ask you is, do you think the PAP government held it against you because you are a fellow of it?
I don't know, but it just put in the context. That was decades on after I left university. And at that time, the National Endowment for Democracy was just basically a conglomeration of four big organizations: the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, and they have their own foundations. And then, of course, you have the AFL-CIO, and AFL-CIO is the unions. And then the last one was, of course, your business. I think they call it CIP. Forget what it was, but it has to do with the business. So it was a very big organization, and
funded by the government.
Yes, and it started off with it was Ronald Reagan's initiative, and they managed to lobby at that time. He managed to get Congress to, fund an organization, and in it they tried to be as bipartisan as possible, and also to get people from a whole wide range of the political spectrum. And they would have, trained journalists, legal, paralegals, activists, those kinds of things. So it was a very rich, but it was all to promote.
So what is the fellowship imply? What was involved in being a fellow?
For me, I was there to basically to write as a research fellow, and I produced.
So it was you were funded by
yes, it was a fellow. Forget how long it was. I think it was 9 months. Was it 9 months? So I was based in Washington D.C. and I remember at that time, Tommy Cole gave a talk in Washington D.C. and I remember I attended. So it was a good time where I began to learn about political systems, do some comparative studies as far as Singapore was concerned, did some research on Asian systems as well. So it was a fruitful and meaningful time.
So the American experience altogether for you was a mind-opening experience, right?
Very much.
And in fact, democratic. Would you say that your convictions about democracy derive from that experience?
I have to take you back to one incident before I left Singapore for the US. And that was, I think, if I'm not mistaken, before I had gone to NS. If my memory serves me correctly, I think it was just a time when PAP, Lee Kuan Yew, came up with his graduate mother scheme.
Yes.
Right? And the whole idea was that if you were a university graduate, in other words, you were deemed intelligent, and somehow you would pass on the genes, so you were encouraged to have more children. If you were a non-graduate, you were discouraged to have more than two. And to this day, I just cannot figure out what triggered something in me. It rubbed me raw. And I remember being very upset about it. And I had attended, at that time I was attended church. The church is gone already, at Bras Basah. And I was so disturbed. I brought it up with my elders.
Were you a Methodist or what?
It was, I think they call it non-denominational. It was brethren churches. And I just remember I brought this matter up with my elders. And their comeback was that, no, as a church, we don't take that stand, but as individuals, feel free. And I remember really, then I wrote a letter. And at that time was in my late teens, before NS. Maybe at that time during NS. I remember I wrote a letter to Straits Times. And at that time, we could still publish in our pseudonym. But they would have to verify that pseudonym is yours. So I remember at that time I put the letter in. Straits Times called me up and says, "Oh, can we talk to this Mr. Chee Soon Juan?" And I said, "Yes, speaking." He says, "Are you that person, this pseudonym and everything?" And I froze, And I froze. I didn't know what to do. Hang on. And the letter never got published. But this is a confessional. Just to tell you at that time, how, in the society like that.
Just when you were late teens, right?
Yes, late teens. So that's before. So, then after that, when I left for the US already, and right even through when I did my postgraduate, my master's and my PhD, I was kind of thought, hey, look, maybe I was really young, kind of, never really thought things through. And I just thought, let's just leave for West, and I didn't have to face all this nonsense. But then in my almost 10 years that I was away, it was in the 80s. And when I came back to Singapore, it never really quite went away. I was still coming back. And I was just saying that, and especially when you do your PhD.
You came back in 90, right?
I came back in 1990, yes. And then when you do your PhD, you always question. There are always more questions than answers. But in Singapore, no. There always the answers are there, and it's received wisdom. Correct? Everything we say, you do. We tell you jump, you ask how high. Nothing else. Because there was in the 90s still no social media, no nothing at that time. And I just felt very, very unsatisfied and just couldn't quite fit back into the system. And that was also because of the years. But I must say that during when I did my PhD, I did it more in the neurological, biological, medical side of psychology. And that's why I did a lot of experimentation on animals. Very little to do with, and I just basically did a lot of research on neurons and all synapses. And if, ate, breathe, and live, the brain, that kind of thing. And during those few years, I was very much out of touch with, you basically just slept in there. Literally, like very many evenings, you just after the experiment, you're just too tired to go back. And, in the winter time, and that time I was still very much a pauper at that time. Not that I'm rich right now, but couldn't afford a car, so got a little motorbike, moped. And every time you just drove back, the road would freeze and then you just skidded along. So in the end, said, forget it, I'm just in the lab. So those were
so the PhD period was basically focused on the academics of the topic. And
yes, very much so. Very much so.
Politics was completely to the side.
Yes, and you didn't really have very time. Although, during my breaks, I just remember reading Alvin Toffler at that time, Future Shock. And then later he wrote Third Wave, and then kind of other books as well. But that was during, my breaks and everything. But during semester time, it was really, really difficult because, graduate school, and then after I got to teach some more. While they're studying at the same time. And that was, again, a very difficult time. But as I said, at no point did I feel that it was a drag. I never felt that I didn't wake up not wanting to go into the lab. And that was how excited I got about my research. And I was doing research on drugs, de-amphetamine, and its effects on the brain, so on and so forth. So again, it's very, very narrow in that sense. But that really gave me that drive to want to find out the truth. And as I said, I'll come back to it. So I remember during my dissertation, your major professor and your team of dissertation examiners, I don't know, was probably like the hazing of PhD students. And that was your final hurdle when you had to clear your dissertation, and then they will award you your PhD if you pass. But then you walk in and you come out feeling even 6 inches because they made you feel so small, made you feel that don't think that you're just because you're going to graduate with a PhD that you know everything.
This was the PhD interview, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
and it was horrible experience that, but you know where they were because you called them by first names already, and they knew where you were going to, but they wanted to let you know how little you don't know despite all the 4 years of however long they did your work.
That is the academic hierarchy, right?
Oh, you're not like that with your students, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was, but I come back to it. Hard as it was, I never felt it was tedious. I never felt I had to drag myself.
Okay, now you have this neuroscience aspect of you, then you have the politics. In today's context, or when you came back, how did these two merge? Or did it merge at all?
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. And at that time, I remember coming back and I was at university. And,
I forget the name of the professor.
Basu.
Basu, you're the PhD guy, right?
Yes. Yeah. I think he's still straining for helping us take the constituency. Yeah. But as I was continuing doing my research and as I was looking back, my whole everything came flooding back to the system. It was just basically that whole system was that you memorize and during exams.
So the American experience was the freedom of inquiry.
Yes.
Suddenly you were thrown into the NUS system, which is very prescriptive and very structured.
Yes.
So that was for you. Was it for you a big traumatic experience?
I was told to organize workshops and workshops for parents, in terms of, and I said, and then you charge parents. But the whole premise was that you wanted to turn your experience, your knowledge into dollars and cents. And I just thought my research was very basic research, not applied research at all. What do you want me to go and talk to parents about neurons and neurotransmitters? How am I going to, But then so I remember organized one workshop I had to do with some person. I just did it that was not too, pleased about it. But it came to the point where I just felt so disturbed that I started writing to the forum again. And this time we had to publish the names. And I remember writing about our PSLE system. So I wrote in the first time. But I put my name. I never said I was no affiliation with the university and so on and so forth. So I wrote back. MOE then replied, right? Because I just wrote about, PSL system, streaming, everything, pure. I then wrote the second letter, replying to it. MOE replied. So it was like a running battle. And all in all, for the primary PSLE, it was about 3 letters from each side. Then I went to the next step. I wrote another couple of letters on A levels right now. It's basically what are we trying to tell our students to do? You're not. And remember back in 1990s, then I got called up, said, don't write it.
Called up by who?
Mr. Basu, Dr. Basu. You write, will count against you. But I said, I kept telling him, don't, okay? I don't identify myself as an NUS professor, lecturer. I'm writing in my own capacity. And no, at that time, no. After that, just felt I had to do something about it. At that time, I wasn't married yet. Then when future wife came over and said, I have to do something about it. They'll eat me up. If I continue knowing what I know, just pretend that, what will do, then close your eyes. So I, for all it's worth, I threw my hand at the window and the same of the business.
So the academic problem that you face, they didn't like you making public statements about government policies and so on, right? And in other words, you were embarrassing the government, and because of that, they put some restrictions on you, and because of that, was it because of that you then joined a political party?
At that time, I was also, of course, I was invited to join the young PAP. But I just, people were telling me, hey, look, you want to change the system, what are you going to do? Fight them? You change from within, get it through, and then rise up to the ranks and everything. And in my own mind, I was thinking, how much of yourself do you have to compromise? And your beliefs and your principles, do you have to compromise to get up to where you can be, to make change, to change, transform, or do whatever you need to the system, PAP, and then be able to wake up in the morning, look yourself in the mirror, and say, I will still recognize that person.
What did your mother say to you when you were doing all this?
Oh, like all mothers.
Yeah.
Hit as I said, the S hit the fan. Oh my gosh. And at that time,
my position for Singapore mothers are really ally of the PAP government.
In that sense that, when you look back, I just felt that angst, but I never really quite did.
Okay, so I think you can understand that angst was actually amplified by the fact of your American experience. And it was such a contrast to the Singapore environment that felt was really unacceptable.
Yeah, and the whole idea is that, the whole myth, is that somehow or other we are Asians and we're very industrious.
Yeah.
Right? And more so Singapore than West, they tend to be very querulous, very lazy and not diligent, that kind of thing. I can tell you from my own experience, no, you've got your classmates there. They'll sit and they will think, and they can think on their feet. And as the professor is talking, they're thinking and they're questioning them. And I just felt like fish out of water. I just couldn't do two at one time. So, there were times when I just walked in when I was teaching already, right? I was just telling this joke one time when at NUS, I was telling my Singapore students, I said, the difference between US, teaching in US and teaching at NUS is that when you go to the US, you say good morning, everybody says good morning, right? But when you say good morning NUS, all the students look down and stuff, right? So it's that kind of a thing that I wanted. And it was a real experience that I opened. And as I said, even over there, I could tell you, during your semester breaks, summer breaks, a lot of and I'm talking about American students who remain behind and take up jobs, which I did as well, university job, paid minimum wage. At the time, minimum wage was only $3.25. But we were maintenance workers. We went out, we mowed the lawn, because sometimes poles need to be put in for football games. We had to go and carry furniture. We did it. But at the end of the day, you felt you did a hard day's work. And you felt very gratified. You earned it.
This is where it will become a very interesting case study, I would say. Many Singaporeans have gone over to America to study, and to Europe, Britain, and so on, right? And they have all experienced in the kind of freedom and democracy that in the learning process, living there. But when they came back, they did not go through the kind of struggle that you have. I think you don't want to understand where does that aspect of you come in. You went through hell. They prosecuted you, bankrupt you, put you in jail. Why were you so unusual that you fought back so hard?
Maybe it's
So where does that thing come from?
The Chinese said, I suppose, and that period in the US, while I was studying in UMI, and you're talking about graduate school already, doing my PhD. I remember, because at that time, still, after I still had to pay tuition, it's very costly. So what I did was found, again, a job, part-time, at a Chinese restaurant.
No, but many of Singaporeans also went through that experience. Also did part-time jobs.
Yeah, I don't know. And okay, like since I suppose what to take away from it.
Yeah.
And for me, it was just that you value experience, value money. And because of that time, just depended on tips. So every time, one table left you a few tips to pick, but it's cold hard cash. Money that you take to the supermarket, to the grocery stores, to buy your week supplies of food. And that really taught the value of money. And it also just opened my eyes in terms of, in life, what's it all about, right? And if it's not to better the lot of the fellow human beings, then why not? And that was the question that I took away. So,
but that fighting spirit, you see, we all trying to understand that of you. That fighting spirit that never gave up. You see. Where did that come from? And you say never on bended knees.
I suppose after a little while,
I mean, most people bend their knees.
Yeah,
right? You somehow, right?
Knowing what you know from your studies, from your experience, you know that they are wrong. And I've been proven because it was only last year that Forward Singapore, Lawrence Wong, said, we will abolish streaming. It took 30 years for me to be able to keep telling them, and in the process. But I suppose if it's hard, it's worth it, right? I think it was something that things that are worthy of change is never easy. I take that with me in the sense that, it may have been a long struggle, but I just honestly feel that enduring change comes with perseverance.
Yeah, I think this is the aspect of your political life that I think demands a great deal of respect. That you're persistent. You will not cave in. I think that's wonderful. So now that leads to, I think, the final set of my questions, right? Which is about your political imagination about the future of Singapore. Okay. I think that Singapore needs the kind of fighting spirit that you have, because we're going to face very difficult times as the world is in a very change mode. But we are also beset with this idea of this small island city-state. And in a perverse way, we have become we celebrate the idea of being a little red dot. Can we continue to be a little red dot in the kind of world that we're going to go into? What does it take? What kind of future can we aspire to?
I honestly feel that in this day and age, geographical size, physical size of the country is not as important.
I mean, you made the point in the book about the geographical location of Singapore is its greatest asset. Yes, yes, but that has been turned into basically Singapore becomes a transactional location, right, from which we can gain certain benefits. Should we remain as a transactional location?
Yes, and that's where I'm worried. See, and I look at Lawrence Wong after having taken over from Xi. What does he envisage for us going forward? Correct? And I haven't heard anything that is at least, instrumentally different from what is done. And I say we coast upon what we're doing right now. Continue to hold captive Singaporeans' minds. I'm saying we're done for. We're done for. And as I said, I look at it and I say, you look at our economy right now. We've become a rentier economy, which is depending on basically rewriting our laws to bring in an additional debt in 2004, when they just open up the floodgates to bring in this financial turnaround, financial system.
And we're an incredibly rich nation.
But you've got to say rich for whom? That is the question, you see. And I keep saying that we chase after family offices. Okay, and in the process,
we have a huge sovereign wealth fund that is technically owned by the people of Singapore, right? But administered by the government, whoever the government is, right? Can this huge sovereign wealth fund be used more purposefully? That's my question to you.
Well, the first question you want to ask is how much do we have in the sovereign wealth fund?
Well, let's say $2 trillion.
Yeah. So from there, you can see, okay, that the one thing that we need to do is let the people go. Because if you don't, let the people go, meaning that we've got to right now graduate the next phase of our economy, whereby we've got to start thinking of ideas, innovation.
How do you let the people go?
Meaning that you make sure that you don't just go on this ancient kind of practice whereby all our newspapers, all our TV stations, all our radio stations are all controlled by the government. Correct? Let them go. There is something to be said about freeing up the media because in the process it frees up the mind. And that is why I should say, you look at anywhere in the world, the most innovative societies are also the ones that are freest. Correct? Otherwise, as I said, your Steve Jobs, right? Your J.K. Rowling, but your Elon Musk will come from North Korea.
Is China a free society? And yet it's incredibly.
You dig a little bit further. Yes, you dig a little further. Read Professor Huang Yat-Sen. What you saying? No. China is not. China brings in a lot of materials, dismantles it, re-engineers it, reverse engineer.
That takes quite a bit of a creative.
Yes. But I'm saying you've got to then graduate the next phase. Yeah. Right? And I'm saying you cannot remain where Japan was 30, 40 years ago. It took cars in, and reassembled them, sold them out, and then in the process, really began to be innovative. And you take the example of Taiwan. The TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Chartered Company, right?
Which they bought from us.
Yes. And at that time, I remember we about that time started our semiconductor. So what happened was that you look at where they are now. TSMC is the 12th biggest company by market capitalization, and the most important chip maker, and everybody is terrified that if Taiwan falls, all your chip making and everything will fall in the wrong hands, right? But you would look at where Chartered Semiconductor, we were sold to some foundry American chip maker, but no way. This is what I'm trying to say. Innovation. You look at South Korea, right? In any of the electronics market and look at the pop industry, they're miles ahead. Here we are struggling just to, what do we sell to the world? Almost. How do we continue to bring in billionaire families and then make sure that we bring in all the foreigners just basically to prop up GDP growth? Is that kind of GDP growth healthy for our society? You've got to ask that question. And I keep saying,
no. So the question that I want to throw back at you is, and then what are we going to do? What should we do?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. You're really talking about a society.
We are so incredibly rich.
Yeah.
We are in a terrific position geographically, right? We have a highly educated population. What are we going to make out of that? What should we make out of that?
And that's why I keep coming to this point. It is the quality, not the size of the population. The quality of the population is going hugely important going forward. Because you've got to depend on now ideas, ingenuity, creativity.
Yes.
Right? And people say, yeah, but it's so small. But you look at Sweden, not much bigger than this. You look at the Scandinavian countries, I come back to it, right? It's not the size of the population. You look at Sweden sells everything about IKEA, right? Volvo, H&M, right? You name it to them, correct? And I'm saying it's not the size of the population, but you look at what makes that difference in them. It's how you cage people's mind. And I don't say this as rhetoric. I say that's very practical, pragmatic going forward. We continue on this line. I can tell you in the next 5 to 10 years, we will meet our fate. And this way, and I say, okay, you look at
all these negative conclusions that we come to are perfectly rational, right? The question is then, given the challenges that we have, given the resources that we have, how can we do otherwise?
Yeah. And that is where I repeat what I've been telling Singaporeans all these years. The struggle is not against the PAP. It's against what the PAP has done to all. The very fact that it keeps telling us that without us, cannot go forward. Right? So it's put us in a mental wheelchair. And if you're in a wheelchair, you cannot stand up. You cannot walk. You cannot even run. Right? And I just cite again one very good example. Football. Okay? Football. People say, Singapore is small. You don't expect us to compete. What nonsense are we talking about?
We were damn good in it.
Yes. And I'm saying you look at Ecuador. You look at, was it Iceland? A population of 400,000 people.
Yeah.
Okay? They managed to get a World Cup final twice. You look at New Zealand, 3 million people, and they're all blacks, rugby team, who rule the world. So I keep saying it's not the size of your population, it's whether you hold your people hostage. Don't let them go. And just keep having this parasitic relationship with people when you reach off.
So the role of the state. So you're saying the state has a very big role in creating the opportunities for the talent, the innate talent to blossom. And the state has not done it. You're saying that
back in the 60s, 70s, the state had a very important role to play, as with, some of the Asian countries, tiger economies come up. The difference was that with the Taiwanese, with the Koreans, with the Japanese, the government provided the resources and then come back, right? And just says, guys, take it from there. But in Singapore, it was a PAP that insisted on being in front and center of everything, right? So that today, you look at our domestic sector, it's all GLC, correct? And I'm saying the problem.
But you see, the GLCs are equivalent of the chaebols in Korea or the Zaibatsus in Japan, right? And they were the drivers of the economic.
With a very big difference.
What's the difference?
And that is in the sense that your GLCs, right, are all either your subsidiaries or your sub-subsidiaries, all traced back to Temasek. Who owns Temasek? Fully owned by the Ministry of Finance.
Right.
And this is where my problem is. And I keep coming back to this whole point. That if Singapore, in the last 2-3 decades, we've been lamenting about our productivity growth, right? And as I said, you look at our economy. Who sits right in the center, the 600-pound gorilla, right? It's your GLCs. And if your GLCs are not productive, what do you want the SMEs to do? Correct? And I keep coming back to this point that because of this whole control and everything is run by technocrats, I'm telling you, run a business like this. I'll tell you this. You count every penny. You count every dollar. But you look at a GLC, right? You pump in the money. SPH, never mind. Give them $900 million. I'm not sure what it is. But this is where I'm trying to, what I'm trying to get at is that if you don't begin to let the people go, step back, okay, and then I keep coming back to this whole point. That there is example. Steve Wozniak, right? He was the co-founder of Apple, Steve Jobs. He came to Singapore. He was saying you'll never get an Apple coming out from Singapore. Because why? You've destroyed all the creative elements. With every nail that sticks out, we hammer them down.
You have no garages for a Steve Jobs to begin his.
No, what I'm trying to say is that, look, sometimes the good starts with bad. I'm saying if you want that whole process where you're so binary, you just separate it. No. Human beings are such, and this is where my psychology is, right? Yeah. Human beings takes all forms, all manner of.
Yeah. Okay, so apply your psychology to the GLC. What would you, what advice would you give to a GLC?
Please divest. And that's what I've said long time ago. Save for the ones that are has got security, national security connotation. Let the rest go. Right? You've got NTUC doing your brokerage. And then after that, you walk in fair price, funeral parlor. And I'm just saying, you don't know yet. You're not seeing a lot of these companies or corporations. You get behind and then you keep tracing them back. You finally come to Temasek. And I can tell, I've had leaders coming in here telling me that for us, why stick on example?
If you had a different kind of Temasek, what would that Temasek look like to you?
The Temasek would be owned, would be run by the people. You have a very rambunctious, okay, society, and that translates into the economy, that kind of. I remember years ago, Lee Kuan Yew said Singapore, the bus, we're missing that bus in what we say in other countries, in Taiwan, Hong Kong. This is what I'm talking about. See? And this is where I'm saying that the entrepreneur comes from that kind of experimentation. You keep going up, you fail, you come back, you do it again, over again until you succeed. That is what makes you.
You are in fact describing a Tankaki. A Tankaki in those days, right? He grew and he also fell down. But in the process, he actually created a whole range of other businesses owned by other people. He actually became the catalyst of the economic growth. He was a catalyst for the first industrial revolution in Singapore.
As much.
And the first industrial estate in Singapore was in Lavender Street.
Oh.
All the shops there were all sponsored by Tankaki. But he insisted on one thing. He helped them, he financed them, he groomed them. They were successful with one condition. 10% of your profit must go into education. It's incredible. This is something which we have lost. We have to revive that notion.
So this is why I keep saying.
So my point is that if a Temasek can be like a Tankaki, we will be very different society.
Yes. But unfortunately, we have a ruling clique that is held for so long, felt so entitled, and they've got too much vested interest in making sure that they continue to control the political system and don't let the And by controlling the economy, they control the political system and not let the political system get away from them. And this is where I think the tragedy of Singapore is going to be in the future.
And the irony is this: whereas you learn democracy from America, the Lee Kuan Yew generation after him, learned from Ronald Reagan the kind of neoliberal economy. See?
I just don't get me started on neoliberalism and then
state capitalism, or shareholder capitalism overrides everything else, right? And in other, there are no stakeholders, only the shareholder matters.
Yes. And if you look at it, it was just your era from your Thatcherism, Reaganism.
Exactly.
And everything
we bought that completely lock, stock, and barrel.
And this is where I say we are not nimble enough to quickly pivot and change our system. We were going to this dead end street of having to rely more and more on foreigners, correct? Not to fulfill your citizenship and then for your non-residents to become the PRs. And it goes on. And I don't know where this whole thing, TFR, right, is below 1. And I'm saying you just extrapolate up. We're going to be such a deep, and I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say that 5-10 years down the road. Okay, we continue on this way, there will be no Republic of Singapore to talk.
Singaporeans will be a minority.
And I think we're already a minority.
Yeah. Any questions?
I don't know, you want to take a step at that?
I think the question is about should new citizens have the same rights as citizens of Singapore in terms of qualifying to buy an HDB flat? I think the answer is quite simple. The answer is that new citizens should be put on a long waiting list compared to a Singaporean who should be put on a shorter waiting list. What do you think?
Yeah, I guess, without wanting to sound or act very xenophobic, I just want to just highlight this point that if you take one step back, not new citizens, PRs are allowed to buy resale flats. And all this of late, when we see the whole spate of flats selling for more than $1 million, and I think the record is still $1.7 million. You've got to be asking who's buying that flat then. And I'll be very curious if I would not be surprised if it was just a PR from somewhere else that has got no kind of yardstick to measure, and they've made their riches back in their home countries, and they come back, they see this flat, with a very nice view, a top floor, maisonette, whatever, executive flat, right? And then, as I said, no point of reference. I think that $1.7 million is good, money to spend. Plunks it down. And then you have a situation where you're spoiling the market, so to speak. For your locals here who may not have the luxury of applying for BTO flat, but is priced out of resale flats right now. I think the government has got to do this, give this a good hard review and see whether this system is just getting away from them and out of their hands as well. So that's a big issue that I think will come up during the elections.
Yeah, I think this is a very serious issue, and it is something that I think there has to be a very high property gain tax to dampen this kind of market reaction.
And I worry in a sense when we talk about new citizens, the PAP uses that as a political tool. Qualified citizens, yes, you always want the infusion of talent and that is very important. But I worry that PAP is just trying to use this political tool in terms of shoring up its vote. So every constituency, every GRC, every SMC, they just need to get the foreign citizens, give them that 1-2%. And that's it. You can have an overwhelming super majority again. So that is a huge concern. It is a huge concern. And as I said, when you juxtapose it to the fact that our locally born population is going down, coming down, and then your population continues to go up, right? You've got to be asking how do you account for that? And I'm just saying that's not even getting into the part of, environmental issues. You're clearing, I haven't seen it for myself, but apparently the Tell City behind the whole stretch is just clear. Crunchy right now, the Crunchy Tell Truck also clear. And, what remnants of green space do we have left? So, these are all things that we should be very concerned about.
Okay, so I think we've reached the end of our discussion. Would you like to make a final statement? What is your plan for the future?
Well, at the very least, right now, I straddle these two areas of pre and post social media. And right now, at the very least, we can directly communicate with the population without going to the filter of SPH and MediaCorp. In the immediate future, it will be the elections coming up. I guess sometime next year. But this is where I just hope that Singaporeans will pay attention, because we're at a very crucial junction at this stage. I'm not being melodramatic. I don't want to be alarmist. But we've reached a stage where we've got to make that choice. Whether we want to go down this road, where I can tell you dead end, okay, go down this other, open this other door, this opportunity beckoning. And I'm saying, be bold, Those good fortune favors those who dare. This is what I'm just trying. My message is to Singapore.
Good fortune favors those who dare. I think that's a very fitting conclusion to our discussion. Thank you very much, Dr. Chee. And I think all our roles in Singapore, those who are in the leading positions, should be helping to shape the new Singapore mind. Because without reshaping the Singapore mind, I think we are done for. Yes. So this is where I must thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for doing this. Thanks, Professor.